Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Treasure Magaziner, for the invitation. It's an honor to join you. It's an honor to support your campaign. And I'd just like to start today by reading a letter from the last Republican to represent Rhode Island.
How long's the letter?
It is right here. So Claudine Schneider represented the 2nd Congressional District when I was a kid, and somebody that I always looked up to. And she writes that we are living in a time more divisive than ever, and the Republican Party has been taken over by extremists. The Republican Party today is not the one that inspired me to run and represent the 2nd Congressional District in 1980. It is now the party of insurrectionist Donald Trump, the party of billionaires making record profits while working people continue to struggle, and it is directly at odds with the values of Rhode Islanders. That's why I'm joining several former elected Republicans in supporting Seth Magaziner. We cannot send Republican Alan Fung to represent the 2nd Congressional District in Congress when we know he will vote along party lines and support the dismantling of our democracy. Fung would not represent the people of Rhode Island since he has aligned himself with the, quote, just say no party. That is why nothing is getting done by this Congress. We cannot support obstructionists who lack principles, compassion, and common sense. If you want progress and civility, a vote for Seth Magaziner is the only course of action. Seth has demonstrated his integrity and care for Rhode Islanders as treasurer for our state. He has supported the homeless, AmeriCorps, and other priorities for Rhode Island time and time again. He will fight to preserve our democracy and stand up for working people, to reverse climate change and invest in clean energy. I'm proudly supporting Seth Magaziner and encourage each of you to do the same, because I am convinced he will put your interests and concerns first, not political party and special interests. There is simply too much on the line for Rhode Islanders and for our country this November. This midterm election will determine the course of our history as a nation. Our future is dependent on every person's vote because you are either part of the solution or part of the problem. We need Seth Magaziner as our next member of Congress. And that was a letter from Representative Schneider. I have some brief remarks of my own I'd like to share with you and reiterate my thanks to the treasurer for having us today. I first met Seth when I was serving in the state Senate. He was a leader in the marriage equality movement. In 2014, we got to know each other a little bit better when we were both down ballot statewide candidates, meeting voters around the state. First and foremost, I'm supporting Seth Magaziner for Congress because I believe he is an earnest and hardworking person who feels a deep calling to serve our state and nation. I'm confident he will pick up and carry the mantle of Congressman Langevin as a serious person committed to the hard work of governing as our next representative in Congress. Because it is hard work. Even in ordinary times, governing effectively for the people is extraordinarily hard and unending work. But we are not in ordinary times, which is why, and probably most of us here, are here today endorsing the Democratic nominee for Congress. Criticizing your own side is not easy in politics, but sometimes staying true to your ideals requires it. For me, those core principles are freedom, dignity, and the rule of law, and they need defending. Upholding these principles is necessary for a prosperous and stable society. A Republican House majority will clearly renew the chaos and seek out the most divisive issues and tactics available in an effort solely to diminish the administration of the president and to attack their Democratic rivals. Like I said, freedom. Freedom to me, today, tomorrow, in the coming Congress, who can you marry? To me, that's a freedom of an individual's choice in America. Freedom means healthcare, bodily autonomy, dignity. Everybody in this room has read the news stories about a group of refugees that was lured under false pretenses and flown by the governor of Florida from Texas to Martha's Vineyard. There are a lot of stories, different versions of that happening as part of a movement. And that violates the dignity of those people who are victims of that scam. And it violates the dignity of every American because that violates our values. It's part of an overall Trumpist degradation of the values of this country and the Republican Party. If elected to Congress, the Democrats and the Republicans will be considering proposals by Senator Rick Scott to take out Social Security. Think about the dignity of the quality of life of older Americans as they try to rely on their Social Security. It's unconscionable. Finally, the rule of law. Rule of law after a lawless administration of the Trump years, where we've seen a weaponized Department of Justice. Some people don't appreciate the extraordinary danger to democracy that represents. If you have followed the developments out of the Southern District of New York, where the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney has listed that weaponization, has described political prosecutions, that's on behalf of all of us. And we all have a duty to say, no, we're not going to support those conditions. The events down at Mar-a-Lago, where the President of the United States, who in our system of government is now a citizen, like you or me, subject to the laws of this country, took government property, classified government property, some of the most sensitive secrets in the country, from the government, from the people's White House, to his private estate in Florida. He was raided by the FBI upon finding a probable cause of a U.S. federal magistrate, somebody who sworn to uphold the laws and said there was just cause. And in response, Kevin McCarthy, the future Speaker of the House under a Republican majority, threatened the Department of Justice. You know, it's really unprecedented, and using the word unprecedented really does not seem sufficient anymore. And then finally, rule of law, January 6th, democracy itself. Questions about whether we are going to stand up for our democracy are going to be presented in the next Congress. We have a choice whether we're going to be on the side of a functioning democracy where the will of the people, as recorded at the ballot box, is accepted, and we have peaceful transfers of power, or if we will see the same type of lawless coup in the future. Like I said before, upholding these principles is necessary for a prosperous and a stable society. I'm a Republican, or I was a Republican, a business owner, I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in free enterprise and freedom. All the things that motivated me to be a Republican are now gone. So as a citizen and as an employer, I want a free and stable society where our rights are protected and the political system rewards constructive dialogue, not cruelty. Which brings us to Alan Fung. I like Alan. Alan and I shared a statewide ticket in 2014. When I was in the state Senate, he was more than gracious and supportive. And from where I can tell, it looks like he did a fine job as mayor of Cranston. But Alan Fung is the wrong man at the wrong time. The way I see it, in today's environment, there are three types of Republican politicians. There's the good, there's the bad, and there's the worst. The good ones are very rare. I think of people like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, people with the type of courage to risk their own political careers and futures to do the right thing, serving on the January 6th commission, as well as a general posture towards putting the Constitution over party. So there's three types, the good, and there's the bad. The bad are the MAGA Trumpists. Think about Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the extremely divisive, controversial, provocative Republicans that make the headlines across this country. Those are the bad. And they'll say it out loud. But then there's the worst. The worst are the ones who know better. The worst are the Republicans who believe in freedom, believe in dignity, and believe in the rule of law. But as that cascade of sins against these principles has happened over the last 5 years, have looked the other way, have made excuses, have said, now I can't speak up. That's Alan. Alan hasn't stood up to this. Alan was, by virtue of his office as the mayor of Cranston, one of the top elected Republicans in the state. One of the people who had a platform upon which to stand and a voice which he could have used. And I don't say that Alan Fung is responsible for Trumpism. I don't even say he accelerated it, but he didn't do anything to stop it. And he's making some promises to you as a candidate for this office that he can't keep. He promises that he will be a moderating influence on the GOP in the House of Representatives. Well, assuming that he truly did feel that way, he's done that. That's not a reasonable outcome to expect, because we have seen moderate Republicans go to Congress and they just go along. And if you are unwilling to stand up to Trumpism and Trumpery and all of the violations of our constitutional and public norms, why should we believe that you will develop your stiff spine to stand up for those values in Congress? I think the pressure is greater to go along even further when the second promise I think Alan has made and he can't keep. Alan tells us when Kevin McCarthy visited Rhode Island that he has a pass. He's told Kevin McCarthy, I'm going to be with you on certain issues and not on others. And in the same conversation, Kevin McCarthy told him he was going to put him on the best committees in Congress. And then Kevin McCarthy told our press corps that Alan Fung is going to run New England. He will be the congressman that all congressmen in New England have to come through, because he will be in the majority. Those aren't realistic. There's no specific plan to affect them. I don't think that there is a way to benchmark any of that progress. And I think it is a way to diminish the sting of how Republican performance in Congress and in Washington makes Rhode Island voters feel. And there's no other path for a Republican to get elected than to convince Rhode Islanders that they'll be a moderate, that they won't be like the group in Washington. But there's nothing in Alan's record as a leader that would suggest that that's what he's going to deliver on. So on the basis of all that, I would say it'd be dangerous to support Alan Fung or any Republican for the 2nd District. And I would encourage my fellow fiscal conservatives, civil libertarians, people who believe in democracy, freedom, and dignity to support Seth Magaziner. Now I'd like to turn it over to my former colleague from the General Assembly, Representative Bobby Nardillo.
Thank you, Senator. Hello and good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us here today on this very important occasion. I'm very proud to stand before you and support Seth Magaziner for Congress. Thank you for having me, Seth. Seth has a proven track record of serving Rhode Islanders statewide, addressing their concerns and their future ambitions for Rhode Island's future. He has done this as our General Treasurer for several years and has done so with excellence. He has built great relationships with Rhode Islanders in his time in office, and I strongly believe he will continue these relationships as our congressman. Seth also has a proven track record of working across the aisle with those from the other party. I am an example of this. From my time in office as a state representative, we worked together on his first piece of legislation. It was the first of its kind, and it tremendously helps Rhode Islanders with developmental disabilities. We created a special savings account for their future needs. While working on this legislation together, I got to know Seth. Seth is a true leader. While he and I might disagree on some policy, what we do agree on is that public service is more important than politics. Seth sees how important this is, and I strongly believe that when he goes to Congress, he will advocate for all Rhode Islanders and policy initiatives that benefit Rhode Island's future. Seth is a gentleman and a class act, and has a true heart for public service. Rhode Island will benefit tremendously by his representation in Congress. I look forward to congratulating him in November. Thank you. Turn this over to Councilman Ferry.
Thank you. My name is Robert Ferry. I am currently the Vice President of the Cranston City Council, and I am both humbled and honored to be here today to help my friend Seth Magaziner, who I feel will be an unbelievable congressman. The Republican Party has become so extreme that I feel there isn't room for collaboration or innovation. And it is one of the reasons why I left the Republican Party and became a Democrat. I worked with Alan Fung as a constituent on issues, and then as a council person-elect. And I saw how he constantly forced other Republicans to vote down party lines. And if you didn't, you were punished. Alan put himself and his own legacy before the interest of Cranstonians. That's exactly why Rhode Islanders cannot afford to send him to Congress. I am supporting Seth Magaziner because I truly believe he will fight for the people of Rhode Island and not just special interest or for one party. Will I always agree with Seth? Maybe not, but I will always work with him, and I know that he will always be willing to work with me. So I urge you to support him. Thank you. Well, next on the list here is Vin Mazulo.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Vincent Marzullo, and my political history and experiences are quite extensive. But let me start out by first acknowledging that 40 years ago, I ran for governor as a Republican with a group of centrist and moderate Republicans: John Chafee, Claudia Schneider, Susan Farmer, Arlene Violet, all of whom, or most of whom, have been pushed out of the Republican Party. The Republican Party of the 60s, 70s, and 80s no longer exists today. There is no room for a centrist or a moderate Republican, especially one who wishes to establish common ground and carry out the public's business in a manner that serves the public. I got to know Seth when I was serving as a career federal official overseeing the national service programs here in Rhode Island, which I did for 31 years. Seth was appointed by the governor at the time to serve on the National Service Commission here in Rhode Island. In that experience and relationship, I also learned that Seth had served his country before that appointment as an AmeriCorps National Service member in Teach for America in Louisiana. So I know his heart is in the right place. And today, there's just too much division, too much divisiveness. We need elected officials that are going to bring individuals together to have civil and respectful discourse that allows us to address and solve the problems of our country and Rhode Island. I was also fortunate in 2019 to serve as the volunteer president of AARP. I was appointed by former Secretary of State Kathleen Connell to that position. I've been an AARP member for 25 years. I've supported their work and efforts, particularly with strengthening and preserving Social Security and Medicare. This fight is a real fight. We cannot allow the Republicans to dismantle, destroy, replace with some mysterious alternative to Social Security or Medicare. We need Democratic representatives and a democratically controlled House to preserve, strengthen our Social Security system and the programs that support a growing, aging community. Seth is that individual that will protect and serve us well in Rhode Island. I also know Alan. I worked with him as a federal official in funding programs in Cranston. And I believe in the first year when he was elected mayor, he attempted to dismantle senior programs at the Department of Senior Services, and myself and people from the Senior Center Advisory Commission had to appear before the city council in order to advocate for proper funding of those programs. So we need a fighter and someone who is going to preserve the interests and support the interests of the aging community. And I believe that person for this mission and assignment is Seth Magaziner. I ask my friends, my colleagues, and all of Rhode Island to join in this united effort and strengthen this victory in November by voting for Seth. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. I'll be brief. I want to start just by thanking Congresswoman Schneider, Senator Hodgson, Representative Nardolillo, Councilman Ferry, and my friend Vin Mazulo. What they are doing today takes courage. It's always a hard thing to go against your party in normal times. But as has been said, we are not living in normal times, and it's even harder now. Now look what happened to Liz Cheney, right? And so what each of these individuals are doing is courageous. It shows that they care about their country and our Constitution ahead of political party, and that's the way it should be. So I thank each of them for their courage and for their service. I want my son to grow up in a democracy. That's what this is all about. I want my son to grow up in a world where he can vote in a free and fair election, and where both sides will accept the results of the election and the will of the people, even if their candidates aren't successful, and won't try to overturn the election results or storm the Capitol or anything else. And as I've been campaigning over the last several months, I have talked to countless Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, and others who have conservative values, but do not like what has happened to the Republican Party in the era of Donald Trump. So people are supporting our campaign, even though we may not agree on everything, because we agree that we need to stand up for our Constitution, we need to stand up for the rule of law, and we need to turn the page on Trumpism and MAGA Republicanism once and for all. And people know that a vote for Alan Fung is a vote for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker of the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy, who voted to overturn the election results on January 6th. We cannot have election deniers in charge of the House of Representatives, period, full stop. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you again to these leaders who are here today for their integrity. And each of you have my commitment that in Congress, I'll do what we did in the State House, which is work across the aisle with Republicans, Democrats, Independents, anyone who is willing to get together to produce positive results for the people of Rhode Island. But in order for that bipartisanship to be possible, once again, we have to turn the page on Trumpism once and for all. So there's a lot at stake in this election, and I thank you all for being here today. So we're happy to take questions if there are any.
Dawson, are you presently unaffiliated?
Yes.
When did you leave GOP?
I disaffiliated in the fall of 2016.
And Bobby, are you present? What is your party status? Then,
I voted in the Democratic primary.
Seth, could we get you to weigh in on the court decision involving truck tolls? Do you think this is the final verdict, or is there hope for the state to be able to maintain its tolling regimen?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that the Department of Transportation and the governor are exploring their legal options now. If there's an opportunity to appeal, I'm sure they will. But I haven't, the decision obviously just came out an hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to review it in detail.
Congresswoman Snyder, on an interview her years ago, she left Rhode Island over 25 years. She's supporting Democrats all her life. What is the difference now?
Well, again, I think the difference, what you're seeing from Congressman Schneider and from the others who are here, is that they feel that the Republican Party has become too extreme. And I believe Congresswoman Schneider still is a registered Republican. I could be wrong about that. I think she is.
She supported
Yeah,
Hillary.
sure.
But
Yeah,
we have it in audio. I mean,
but he stands with the Democrat. But yeah, I get your point. No, listen, again, there were a lot of Republicans who I'm friends with who supported Hillary Clinton because they were against Donald Trump, who supported Joe Biden because they didn't like what Donald Trump was doing, and who are supporting us in this campaign because they don't want election deniers to be in charge of Congress again. So in some cases, those individuals may have stayed as registered Republicans. In other cases, they felt that they wanted to disaffiliate. But these are all people who were Republicans who have conservative values, but feel that Trumpism violates conservative values and constitutional integrity.
Will there be a formal organization set up, Women for Seth Magaziner, in the case of this, Republicans for Seth Magaziner?
We'll we'll see. I mean, again, we're engaging with voters across the political spectrum, across the district, and we'll see what that looks like organizationally. But I think that what these leaders are doing today is important because it's important to let other Republicans and conservatives know that if they are not comfortable with Trumpism, even if they don't agree with me on everything, there's a place in this campaign for them.
Will there be debates?
Yeah, I hope so.
Any announcements on that yet, or?
I will be Alan Fung as often as we want to do, because I really believe that on every issue that matters to Rhode Islanders, the integrity of our elections, protecting Social Security, Medicare, protecting abortion rights, protecting access to health care, on every issue, we're on the right side and we're with most Rhode Islanders. And he is, yeah, absolutely, LGBT rights. On every one of those issues that's important to Rhode Islanders, we're on the right side and we're on the side that most Rhode Islanders agree with, and he's not. It's no secret that during this campaign, he has developed a pattern of evading questions, and we're going to make sure that he answers them. Yeah.
All of these gentlemen say they know you, they've worked with you in one way or another. What does it mean to you to have their support? And
It's a lot on a personal level. As I think about this group here, I mean, Bob's right. He was very generous, by the way. It was not just my bill, it was our bill. But one of the very first bills that I worked on as state treasurer was a really good one that we set up together, creating what's called the ABLE programs, tax-free savings accounts for young people with disabilities. I had never met Bob before that, and we formed a great working relationship and a friendship that's lasted ever since. Dawson is someone who I've admired for a long time, when he was, I think, the first Republican in the state Senate to come out for marriage equality. So I know these men to be, and Claudine to be people of courage, and I think that's on full display again today.
notwithstanding the question involving Republicans for magazine or organization, how do you leverage this support among Republicans to run that up?
Yeah, I think that these are each individuals who voters have trusted, right? Voters trusted Claudine Schneider to represent the 2nd District for 10 years. Voters trusted Dawson and Bob and other Bob, and to represent them as well. And Vin Mazulo has been a community leader for many years. So I think, voters have shown that they trust the judgment of these people who are standing here with us today, and I trust that they'll trust them again on this.
As you've campaigned in CD2, have you encountered voters who don't believe in the results of the 2020 election?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. I mean, if you look at the public polling, a majority of Republican voters nationally believe that the election was stolen, rigged, not legitimate. And that is a clear threat to our democracy. I mean, this is something that has not happened before. When Hillary Clinton lost the election, she conceded the next day. Donald Trump still denies that he lost in 2020, even though he did. People look to their leaders, right? Like, the average person looks to their leaders, and when the leaders of the Republican Party, not just Donald Trump, but Kevin McCarthy too, are saying, well, the election was rigged, we can't trust the results, this, that, the other, that is toxic to our democracy. The United States is the oldest democracy in the world, and the rest of the world is littered with failed democracies. Don't think that can't happen here if people of courage aren't willing to stand up and say the right thing.
How often has it happened that you've encountered voters that don't believe in the results of the last election? Is this once in a while, or, sketch that out? How often has it happened?
Yeah, I mean, frequently, because in our campaign, we are campaigning in every part of the district, right? So, just in the last week, we've been to Burville, we've been to Coventry, we're all over the place. And, one of the things I laid out when we decided to run for Congress is we are campaigning everywhere. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of pockets of people who unfortunately are buying into these conspiracy theories. And we cannot enable that further by electing a Congress that will be run by election deniers.
What do you say to those people? What are those conversations like?
I mean, I think you gotta, Mitt Romney, when on January 6th, when the Senate was debating whether to accept election results or not, Mitt Romney had a great line. He said, you know, if you want to show respect to voters who are unsure about the outcome of the election, the best way to show respect to those voters is to tell them the truth, and even if it's a truth that they're not ready to hear. And he's absolutely right about that, Senator Romney is. So, you know, my response is always to push back and to say, listen, I understand that you may not like Joe Biden, you might have liked Trump better, but Trump didn't win the election. Joe Biden did. There are more than 30 lawsuits that the Trump campaign brought, including often to Trump-appointed judges to try to overturn the election results. All of them failed because there's just no truth to these conspiracy theories. So I do think you have to push back. You know, you don't have to get into a heated argument, but the best way to show respect for people is to tell them the truth.
How you doing in the polls?
Well, there hasn't been a poll in several months, or at least 3 or 4 months, I think.
You send a mail out asking for money to say that you guys know the Fung is ahead of you.
Well, I know in the
That came out 2 days ago.
Yeah, so no, I know in the Boston Globe poll, which I think was May or June, you know, Alan started out with a lead, and I attribute that to the fact that, you know, he starts with high name recognition, being a mayor for 12 years and having been his party's nominee for governor twice. You know, the Republicans spent a lot of money in 2014 and 2018 boosting his name recognition. But I'm confident that as our message gets out, we're going to be successful, because on every issue that people care about, we're on the right side and the popular side, and he's not. I'd also note that Boston Globe poll came out before the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. And I think that decision was a reminder to a lot of people of how extreme the Republicans in Washington have become. So I'm very confident. We know we have to work hard. We're not taking anything for granted, but I'm very confident that we're going to win this seat.
I have time for one more question.
Is your campaign doing a internal tracking right now? And if so, what are the results?
We haven't started tracking yet.
All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.